In the last video, I mentioned that the words that we use in TBTA, our program for Bible translation, are based on the Longman defining vocabulary in part, but that is not a foolproof description of the words that we use. For instance, we have the word temple, which we prefer to the word church because it's more applicable in the Bible. Now I'd like to take a look at the word senses that we actually have right now in TBTA. And we talk about these words being in what we call the ontology. The ontology is like the system, the world kind of language that we're using. So in the TBTA program, you'll see there are some menus at the upper left, and I'm going to do a left click on ontology and lexicon, and then I'm going to put the mouse over ontology, and then you see some choices there for source objects and target nouns, source events and target verbs, source object attributes and target adjectives, source event attributes and target adverbs. So what this means is that the first item is objects. Those are things. And in English, we usually associate that with nouns. So it says objects and nouns. The second item is events. These are things that happen. And in English, we associate those with verbs. And object attributes, we associate with adjectives usually. Event attributes, things that occur in association with an action, are like adverbs. Relations, it says, are like target adpositions. An adposition is a general term for what we call prepositions, usually in English, but the word preposition implies that it comes before. We say at the party, in the city. So at and in occur before the noun. Adposition is a more general term that could refer to before or after a noun. Then there are conjunctions and particles. So I'll tell you a little bit more about those other things later, but first I'm going to start out with the things, or source objects and target nouns. So I'm going to click on that with the mouse. Okay, and that takes us to this screen. Now on the left side where you see the yellow shading, that is the source terms, and those are the meaning-based semantic terms. Right now, I have the analyzer loaded, which is kind of like English, and on the right side, you see the English terms. Now, because our system is based on English, usually these are the same. So you see the 23rd item on the left, Aaron, that's the brother of Moses, who was the priest. And then in the third column, it says mappings, and there's a little numeral 1. So if we go to the right side, we see the first item is Aaron, numeral 1, Aaron, and it's the same spelling, and that's because our source terms on the left are based on English. But now I'm going to concentrate on the source terms on the left. So you see Aaron there. At the beginning, you see some books of the Bible, 1 Chronicles, 1 Corinthians. And then you see some times, 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 9 a.m. So these are nouns. Now let's go back, and then later you see things, Aaron was a name, but later we see nouns that afternoon, agreement, age. So there are different kinds of nouns. And Aaron, we know, is a male, but that feature is gender, and that shows up in the target language. So in the target language here, if we go to Aaron and we look in the features, we see if we put the mouse over Aaron, it says it's masculine. You can't see very well, but the first line in that white box says it's a proper noun. Proper nouns are for names and places that we usually capitalize. Okay, so that's nouns, and that's all I want to say about the nouns. So you can find the nouns that are currently in our system in this left column of the ontology under objects. Now, we can always add proper nouns, so we can add new names if we need them. As far as the common nouns, things like afternoon and age, we add those somewhat reluctantly because we want to keep our system simple. We want to keep a limited number of objects that need to be translated into a new language. But there are certain cases where we are going to allow new nouns, especially if we can pair them with other nouns. So in our semantic representations, you can write something like this. You can write animal / donkey. Okay, I didn't really want to capitalize that because I want to show that that's common noun there, so I uncapitalized it. So in the semantic representations, if we didn't have a word donkey, we could add it. We do have that. And then in the semantic representations, you could write animal / donkey. And then it pairs this complex noun to animal. So we can do this for common words that are used. We don't want to get too complicated, but especially common objects or animals, we can add them if we pair them to a simpler concept. When we do this, the target language, the language that we're trying to generate a translation for, will use the complex concept if that concept has been translated or defined in the target language. But if it hasn't, it will use the simpler term. So if that language has donkey and it's been defined in the program, they'll use donkey. Otherwise, they'll use animal.